Michelle, tell us about the evacuation plan.
Yeah, first I'm going to interrupt myself because there are just two things I absolutely have to say. One, response to the question to Gary about replacement energy. Look at this campus. Look at every single roof, flat, out in the sun. Okay? One. Two, the industry says we cannot possibly afford dealing with a nuclear accident and paying to protect the public, okay? What do you need to know other than the industry says we'll go bankrupt, and two, the insurance industry, which is the independent arbiter that just sits with little people pads like figuring out money, says, whoa, we ain't going near this one. So, I mean, seriously, what else do you need to know about the actual danger? But while we're talking about absolute nonsense, let's talk about the emergency plan. The emergency plan assumes that people can evacuate. Okay? Well, this is what they don't think about. And I have visuals because I would go apoplectic if I actually had to talk about this. Okay, these are what, I'll pass these around. These are what traffic accidents look like in the New York metropolitan region. Okay, maybe you've never seen one, but they tie everything down. And everybody sits in their car for hour after hour after hour. There are things that are called storms. We've had a few recently, right? Snowstorms in October, a 1-year hurricane. Look what it did to Vermont. It wiped out almost every little bridge in Vermont. Almost the entire roadway system in Vermont was shut down after Hurricane Irene. 2 days later, or 3 days, whatever the heck it was Hurricane Lee, named after me, Michele Lee, thank you. Okay, what did that do to this area? I threw in pictures there, okay? You can't have emergency response when every roadway is down, when things are flooded, when you have wires and electricity lines down, when emergency vehicles can't get to people, when people are in the dark because they lost all their power and they can't get any communications. How the heck are you supposed to know? My neighborhood had 8 blackouts this summer. This is what happened during the blackouts, because they were all at night. Everybody came outside and you saw little flashlights, and then we would like all get together and go, what happened? And then we'd sort of march around the neighborhood and then we'd see like fire trucks or something. Well, imagine that in a nuclear emergency. Imagine that in a nuclear emergency. Because here's the really crucial thing that they don't even include in their specs for the plant or for their emergency plan, storms. They don't include storms. And why is this particularly unbelievable? Because a major storm, Fukushima, is one of the major likely precipitators of a disastrous accident. And the issue only isn't whether something would come like what happened to Japan, which was, we're not going to get a tsunami, but we do get very bad storms. And the problem with a plant like Indian Point is it has had 30 years of aging and deterioration. It already has pipes that are leaking. They've leaked radioactive strontium. They've leaked radioactive tritium. They've leaked radioactive cesium. Already, it's old, it's breaking, it's falling apart. Its underground systems are miles and miles of cables, electrical wires, pipes, many of which are inaccessible. So you can't look at them and you can find out if they're at the brink of about to crack and fissure more. Okay? 2 years ago, there was just a cold day and there was a lot of ice floating around the Hudson River, and some ice chunks, and this is an issue with snowstorms too, some ice chunks with debris got clogged in some of the cooling intake systems at Indian Point. And there was an emergency and a shutdown. During that time, me, the stupid little attorney sitting in their basement office in Scarsdale, got a call, a frantic call from the regional director of a New York senator, and said, "What's happening at Indian Point?" Okay, that's how fabulous our emergency communication system is that a senator is trying to find out what happened from me. I mean, seriously, look. Okay. A couple of years back, Susan and I independently testified before the Department of Homeland Security. Topic I took was emergency communications, because it was right after the 9/11 Commission came out with its report on everything that screwed up at every single point in the line during 9/11. So I figured, oh, I have all this evidence here, I'll talk about this. And I did, and I talked to this whole group of really important looking generals with their little amulets and all that. And then they were like, oh yeah, we really have to look at that, that's a problem. But the key thing is, there's a guy who talked before me, because he was a coroner. And he talked about a coroner conference he went to about because remember, this is not too long after 9/11, so people were like, oh my God, we can have a radioactive emergency. There was a lot of focus on Indian Point and other nuclear plants there, because they found out that the Guard forces had actually no idea whatsoever how to defend against a terrorist attack. Guy before me was a coroner, and his presentation was about how they would have no idea what to do with all the bodies, because the bodies would be radioactive, and it's a real problem. And he too, after his presentation, all the generals and their little animals looking, and goes, oh, we never thought about that, bodies. I'm going to go around with this, and how much more time do I have?
Have about 4 more minutes.
4 minutes. Okay, I'm going to try and do this really fast. In the picture, have worth 1,000 words. So, because this, you can talk about, logistics of roads and bridges and, medical personnel in hospitals. We know what happens in an emergency, because this is what happens. Okay, this is real life. This is people in Japan whose lives have been destroyed, who cannot get back to their homes. 90,000 people, 90,000 are homeless in Japan. Okay? Now, at Japan, guess what? The radiation didn't go on to Japan mostly, it went out into sea. If you remember, right after Fukushima, those watching TV, you do it nonstop like me, kept hearing them going, oh my God, where's the plume going? Where's the plume going? Well, not good for the fish, not good for everybody eating sushi forevermore. But the plume, luckily, thank God, the air blew out to sea. Because what the heck would have happened if it blew into that tiny little island of Japan? I kept looking at the mapping it, and it's like this tiny little sliver. Like, the whole country would have gone. Well, Indian Point has nearly 20 million people. Okay, yeah, this is good. This I won't walk around because I feel like Jared Springer. I'll let you all look at it. Indian Point, is here. One of the major experts on nuclear radiation and emergency plans and everything else, a guy from Gordon Thompson. He runs a security something, I forgot the name of the security, but I have my thoughts if anybody's interested. He came out with an assessment some years back, and then and he was involved with the report with Princeton University, which came out with the same assessment, which is a spent fuel fire at Indian Point. Okay, you're always looking at the domes, that's what everybody thinks about. That's not the major vulnerability. Major vulnerability is the fuel pools, because those aren't built in hardened structures. Those are what are most vulnerable to storms. Those are what are vulnerable to airplanes hitting by accident or by intent. And they were built basically like your average Walmart, because at the time that they were built, they thought they'd figure out a solution to nuclear waste, and now it's been like nearly half a century, and oh gee, we have no idea. Okay? Spent fuel pools. If there was a major spent fuel pool fire in Indian Point, and the contents were released, you would have worse accident than Chernobyl, and what his assessment was 3/4 the size of New York State would be rendered permanently uninhabitable. The last thing I'm going to say is here, I have, for people who want to talk later, I'll move to my table, stuff that I'm not going to show to everybody because it's too upsetting. I have here in this book pictures of what the actual effects after there's a radioactive accident, and years go by and people start having children. And these are pictures of Chernobyl, which was a town in Pripyat. When their accident happened, 50,000 people in a city are evacuated. The area, 1,100 square miles, uninhabitable for between 300 and 900 years. Okay, sorry.